Today, WWE held its press conference in Las Vegas, where they were going to roll out their big announcement, which was first broken by Snapchat from Turkey Al Sheikh. This guy and his announcements are really something, because there was that release on Snapchat, then the botched press release that they had issued and pulled. Then, I can't say this was exactly the WrestleMania announcement, but it sure sounded like it. There was the Canelo Crawford press conference that Dana White was hosting. Did you see this? And at the end of the press conference, Turkey goes, and Dana has a big announcement to make, and Dana just goes, "We'll see you all at the weigh-ins." And he just leans down to tell Turkey, dude. And I don't know if he was expecting, it might have been a separate announcement, because I don't know. I can't get into Turkey's head, but it just seems announcements, dude, he sounds like the worst person to tell a secret to. He just loose lips. He can't wait to get it out, even if he's in a poorly lit hotel room on Snapchat.
And who is going to reprimand him?
Well, no one. And I don't think this guy is probably reprimanded all that often for speaking out of turn. But it was Paul Levesque walking up to the dais to make the announcement, and was accompanied by Turkey Al Sheikh and their security detail in the background there.
We have already announced that the Royal Rumble is headed to Riyadh January 31st of 2026. And today we announced something that takes this partnership to a new level. So on behalf of His Excellency, on behalf of Nick Khan, WWE President, who was the driving force on this deal, I would like to announce that for the first time ever, WrestleMania will be held outside of the United States and Canada. In 2027, we are proud to announce that WrestleMania 43 will take place in Saudi Arabia as part of Riyadh season.
First of all, I want to thank the Crown Prince who supported us and Gia. Without him, we cannot do anything. And with his support, especially also for WWE, will happen in our country. And before 8 years ago, I meet my father, Vince McMahon, and Triple H in my home when I was the Minister of Sport in my country. And I say to them, let's go and have changing to the future, doing big projects together. And I hope now we delivered some of what we say. Couples of years, my close friends, Nick Khan, became the president of WWE. And now we are saying to him that you are continue the legacy of Vince McMahon, and you delivered for us a very big project, and very big surprise will come in this year and next year, inshallah. This is very important for us. For the first time in our region, the big event in the history of entertainment is in our city, in our country, and this is very big to us.
That was Turkey Al Sheikh with Paul Levesque. I mean, not a whole lot of details attached to WrestleMania beyond 2027. They did put out a press release mentioning that, with WrestleMania comes SmackDown, Raw, NXT. Shawn Michaels was also up there, probably by design. This is going to be all of your events you would associate with WrestleMania for the show. It's going to be an incredibly lucrative WrestleMania for WWE. I will be very curious what detail we get in terms of the value of this show that one would assume goes well beyond the standard 50 million, which is a bargain now for a WWE show in Saudi Arabia when you compare it to a WrestleMania the next year. And what this really is going to become, I have a feeling
You think this will be the only WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia? Because
I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying could very well see some very few locations getting WrestleManias, and Saudi Arabia being if Saudi Arabia wanted WrestleMania every year, they could get WrestleMania every single year.
Well, they get an F1 event every year. I mean, that's just the nature of the F1 sort of schedule. But I mean, they can they get the last race of the year if they paid enough money, I'm sure they can. Could they end up eventually at some point getting the biggest show of the year every single year? If they pay enough money, they can. Like if they're willing to offer this amount of money every single year, who is the WWE, this current regime, to turn this down so that they can give Minneapolis, a show, New Orleans a show? Goodbye. New Orleans is never getting a WrestleMania at this point. But like, there's just this is a regime that only looks, and it's the nature of their company, right? They have shareholders, so they only look at the numbers. They're willing to break current contracts to the highest bidder, even if you bid highest. If somebody bids higher than you, they are going to go towards them. So I mean, if this is a success, just expect more of it, everybody.
Everyone understands what the WWE is gaining from this deal. At this point in 2025, where the general sentiment is towards Saudi Arabia, what do you think Saudi Arabia is seeking out of this? Is this just, we want to bring the biggest events to the country? Because I can't think that this, I'm sure there is still a degree of image projection to the world, but we're not talking about where we were just a few short years ago. Like, I think like that has largely, that image has been either rehabilitated in some people's minds, or it is ignored. What are you looking at if you are Saudi Arabia of why these events are worth this level of revenue?
Kind of feel like this conversation might sort of verge beyond like the scope of like what we do to basically dissect and think about why Saudi Arabia is spending money the way that they have been. I mean, I guess like just listening to some of the conversation that's out there, is it because they want to expand tourism and look towards tourism as a growth area for their business when they don't want to rely on oil as much for whatever reason? Is it to sports wash and to get people to not talk as much about all their human rights violations? I mean, I don't know if that's really been effective. You know what? Maybe it has been. And maybe I'm just kind of like surrounded by like the wrong types of people, because I still hear at least some conversation about all of those things whenever these sort of events come up. But I would maybe also suggest to the vast majority, they just look at it as just, okay, yeah, it's people paying a lot of money for these things, and it's normal now.
I do think the tourism is going to be something that is significantly promoted for this WrestleMania. And it's not even looking at like getting Americans to come over. It's all the European countries and ones that are just in that proximity of the world that are going to come for a WrestleMania. And I think that is going to be sort of an initiative here, is to bring people to experience Saudi Arabia. And I think that's going to be a huge aspect of this as well, and maybe we will see some of that for the Royal Rumble. But this is going to be the 300th anniversary of Saudi Arabia. This is going to be a big event that they are going to put untold amounts behind in terms of promotion, in terms of there will be no expense spared for this at all. And I am curious of like how this will be received by your wrestling audience as well. Like, this is, for many wrestling fans, their one big wrestling trip of the year. It's to go to a WrestleMania. Is that going to be something that impacts their U.S. audience at all? Is there going to be any resistance to this? My gut says no on that.
So for all the money they might lose via tourism, like, they're going to be making even more from just getting paid, right, by the GEA. Right.
I mean, there's not going to be any. There will be no losses for a show like this. This is going to be the biggest money event in the history of pro wrestling, and one that, if Saudi Arabia never wants to do this again, might be untouchable. Like, the amount that they will get for this is going to just dwarf anything else that the WWE has ever made in the span of a several day period for what they are being paid to go over and do this.
This is now a show. They're not booking the show to satisfy a paying customer to buy a ticket to the show. They're booking the show to satisfy the one person that is paying for the show, and whatever that person wants, that person will probably get. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, whoever. I'm sure if there's a
What if he
dollar
goes on
amount for it.
Snapchat and gives away the winner of the Royal Rumble before?
I don't. I think they would be fine with that. And not fine with it, but I don't think that they'll punish the offender very hard. Yeah. Like I think it's interesting to talk about, like, you know, whether or not WWE takes any sort of PR hit from it. I think we've seen enough at this point to probably say this company will probably withstand any storm. Look at, like, do we have any? When was this announced? This afternoon? Is there any movement on the TKO stock as a result of this?
I can pull up the stock right now. I mean, this was announced at around 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. I mean, the stock is nothing like noticeable. It's at $202. Their stock is doing tremendous right now. When you like they're trading.
It was high before. It continues to be really high right now. Yes.
The last one, obviously, this is, you know, we're several years away from this. Can you see any potential connection with Vince McMahon by the time we get to this event in some form?
With how glowing this person, Turkey Al Sheikh, is speaking of the man.
This month on the Post Wrestling Cafe, we're going back to November of 1995 as Rewind Away takes a look at the Survivor Series featuring Diesel defending the WWF Championship against Bret Hart. We'll also have weekly editions of Collision Course with the carousel of co-hosts joining Kate from Montreal, reviews of TNA Victory Road, New Japan's Destruction in Kobe, and it is the Ask Away Mailbag Show as John and Wai answer your questions all this month at postwrestlingcafe.com.
Yeah. I can. I mean, I think so much of it depends on what the result of the lawsuit is. If we remain stuck in this sort of limbo by 2027, would you find that tough to believe?
If the case is still ongoing,
yeah,
by 2027,
if we don't have movement by 2027, is that what's that possibility?
I mean, you can't dismiss that. I mean, these things can just go at a snail's pace. I would somewhat be skeptical that it could go that long, but let's throw it out that it is still ongoing.
Okay.
Like I just think this company is in such a position that if they wanted to do business with Vince McMahon, unless it was the only resistance that they would react to are sponsors. Like, I don't think there is the slightest concern about PR backlash. And quite frankly, I question how much of that there would be at this point. Like, it does feel like we have come out of an era in our culture where there was so much, like, it seems like we have come out of this culture and now it's like, it is no holds barred and there is like almost no criticism of anything. And to do so is just, like you will be met with a resistance if you are to show that. And what price is there really to pay for them? And if it's a PR hit, it's one that will be a minor news cycle for them that they can more than withstand. If the right people want someone like that, and that's the key question, if the right people wanted a Vince McMahon in there, and that's another question of if he would be wanted back in this company.
So sort of like the truth of it, I think the news cycle is that eventually every news story just kind of dies down, right? At least in terms of attention. Not every, but like even this one, I mean, much of I think the even concern of the sponsors had to do with just how hot the story was when it broke in all the I'm talking about Vince McMahon, like in all the newspapers and everything. It's been some time since we've had that sort of like explosive bomb of like, you know, seeing the text messages and all that, so that, you know, even by 2027, barring any other like big revelations, for a show that feels somewhat removed from like, you know, this part of the world, if they wanted to bring Vince McMahon in, I think they would survive that storm that I'm sure they would, you know, see online. But I think they would survive it fine. And what does that say about us?
I think it says that I think there is generally a belief that there is. I feel there's just a certain just lack of belief that just disagreeing with something is going to make any kind of meaningful difference. I feel that there is just such an understanding now that if you are of a certain level of influence and power, that's almost futile to even voice one's concern, because there's going to be those that are just going to defend any particular choice, and there's enough of a segment that look at it that if you are arguing from any kind of like sort of moral position, that's like a signal of weakness, and that is something that is just mocked for looking at that. And again, it's one where TKO is just, it's so untouchable in so many different ways that they can withstand their head of the UFC slapping his wife on camera. They can withstand booking this Cedriquis Dumas on an undercard tomorrow that he's going to be fighting in San Antonio, Texas. They can withstand bringing back Brock Lesnar. And here we are a month plus after he came back. We didn't hear a peep out of any sponsor that raised an eyebrow or indicated any kind of concern over that. Came back, no problem. Like, I just think we're looking at things that I just don't know what is necessarily the cost that you're even weighing now if you're TKO, other than is it a value to us to attach ourselves to a Vince McMahon? Because I don't know if there would be all that much of a storm as maybe we think there could be.
No, I don't really think so now. Again, barring any sort of like other big revelation coming out that would renew that sort of news cycle and that stain on him, time just tends to, wash away a lot. And that's just maybe my pessimistic mind, speaking about the wrestling audience. Again, you'll see a lot of like fervor online, I'm sure, but that's not going to matter to them, because you'll continue to see a lot of like, I'm sure, negative discussion related to this announcement of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia and WrestleMania in Riyadh. That's why they didn't have fans. That's why they didn't have press attending this thing, because they know how bad people will react to it. But the more they hammer it home, the more it's going to be normalized, which is the exact intent of all of this. I'm very curious to know how live audiences reacted to the video that they aired tonight at SmackDown. I'm assuming that they did. Every mention of that Saudi show, like the latest Saudi show, I feel has been met with vocal criticism. And are these videos going to, are these reactions going to persist in the year and a half that we're going to be constantly reminded of?
Well, it will be interesting, and on two fronts. Like, there is the I frequently bring it up when we were at Philadelphia for WrestleMania 40. And the booze for the announcement of the upcoming Saudi Arabia show, which kind of took me by surprise, because it seemed to be something that I was not expecting by, here we are, 2024, and hearing that reaction. But it's like, even if there is a portion of the fan base that might have a negative sentiment to the Saudi Arabia shows, it's the other layer of WrestleMania is going to be going to a place that most people cannot travel to. It's like WrestleMania is not going to be a destination for a lot of these wrestling fans that make WrestleMania one of their destination points on a yearly basis or bi-yearly basis. So it's kind of the double end of that, and what the reactions will be like. Yeah.
Well, you could still probably afford a ticket to WrestlePalooza, everybody. You could probably still travel to that.
While ticket yield is at its current rate, because don't hold your breath. Because WrestlePalooza 2, get ready.
Before we move on, of course, if you do want dissenting opinion, and we love dissenting opinion, of course, maybe read an opinion piece that is up currently at postwrestling.com. And I say dissenting opinion in quotation marks because you should be reading this entire thing in quotation marks, by the very brilliant Brandon Thurston, who has written one of the best pieces of writing that we've ever published at postwrestling.com. I believe I said that about his last one. This, I believe, belongs up there as well. I hate politics. That's why I'm going to love WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, I hate politics too, but I do love some of the comments that this has generated, which has been part of the highlight of my day. I mean, it's like 10% of the comments, but boy, are they worth their weight in gold. I love it. Brandon did a
Yeah.
great job on this.
It's remarkable to me like how effective like satire is at making a statement, and Brandon surely does that, of course.